The Last Straw, When Family Betrays, Family Chapter 1. The Perfect Storm. The October wind whipped through the maple trees lining Elm Street, sending golden leaves spiraling across the sidewalk as Sarah Chen pulled into her parents' driveway. She adjusted the rearview mirror to check on her 7-year-old daughter Emma, who was carefully unbuckling her seatbelt in the back seat. "Remember what we talked about, sweetheart," Sarah said, turning to face Emma. "Uncle Mike might be a little loud tonight, but that's just how he is." Emma nodded solemnly, her dark hair falling into her eyes. "I know, Mommy. I'll be good." Sarah's heart clenched. Her daughter shouldn't have to prepare herself to be good around family, but Mike had been increasingly volatile lately. The divorce from his wife of 12 years had left him bitter and unpredictable, and their parents, Helen and Robert, seemed to excuse every outburst, as Mike going through a tough time. The Chen family had immigrated to suburban Cleveland when Sarah was 10 and Mike was 8. Their parents had worked tirelessly to build their American dream, her father's accounting firm, her mother's successful catering business. Sunday dinners at their colonial-style home had been a tradition for over 20 years, a time when the family came together to maintain their connection despite busy lives. But lately, these gatherings felt more like walking through a minefield. Sarah gathered the homemade apple pie she'd brought, Emma's favorite, and took her daughter's small hand. The familiar scent of her mother's pot roast wafted from the house as they approached the front door, decorated with a wreath of autumn leaves Helen had crafted herself. "Sarah, Emma, come in, come in." Helen's voice carried the warmth that had always made this house feel like home. At 62, she remained energetic and immaculately dressed, her salt and pepper hair perfectly styled despite spending the afternoon in the kitchen. "Grandma!" Emma's earlier solemnity vanished as she ran into Helen's waiting arms. "There's my beautiful granddaughter," Helen cooed, lifting Emma despite her own small frame. "I made your favorite green bean casserole." Robert emerged from the living room, his reading glasses perched on his nose and a warm smile creasing his weathered face. "How's my favorite little economist?" he asked Emma, who giggled at their inside joke about her habit of saving her allowance. "I have $17 now, Grandpa." 17! You'll be ready to take over the firm soon. Sarah smiled, watching her daughter's face light up. This was the family she remembered, the one that had supported her through college, celebrated her marriage, and rallied around her during the difficult divorce 3 years ago. Mike's absence from this warm welcome was notable and concerning. "Where's Mike?" Sarah asked, hanging their coats in the familiar hallway closet. "He's in the kitchen, helping with dinner," Helen said, though something in her tone suggested helping might be a generous description. They moved toward the kitchen, where the sounds of clattering dishes and Mike's raised voice became audible. Sarah's stomach tightened. Her brother stood at the counter, his tall frame rigid with frustration, gesticulating wildly while speaking into his phone. "I don't care what she says, Jim. She's not getting the house. I worked my ass off for that place, and she thinks she can just..." He turned and saw the family watching him. "I gotta go," he said curtly, ending the call. At 35, Mike had inherited their father's height and their mother's intensity, but where those traits had driven their parents to success, they seemed to fuel only anger in him. His usually neat appearance was disheveled, his tie loosened, and Sarah could smell alcohol on his breath despite the early hour. "Oh, look who decided to grace us with their presence," Mike said, his voice carrying an edge that made Emma step closer to Sarah. "Hi, Mike," Sarah said carefully. "How are you doing?" "How am I doing?" He laughed bitterly. "Well, let's see. My wife cleaned out our joint account, my lawyer is a moron, and I'm living in a studio apartment that smells like old Chinese food. So I'm doing just fantastic, thanks for asking." "Mike, please," Helen said softly. "We're having a nice family dinner. Let's try to keep things positive." "Positive?" Mike's voice rose. "Mom, my life is falling apart and you want me to be positive." Emma tugged on Sarah's sleeve. "Mommy, can we go look at Grandma's new flowers?" Sarah was about to agree when Helen intervened. "Oh, honey, I don't have any new flowers. It's October. But why don't you help Grandpa set the table?" Emma nodded eagerly, clearly wanting to escape the tension. As she walked toward the dining room with Robert, Sarah noticed Mike's eyes following her daughter with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Maybe we should all just focus on having a good meal together," Sarah suggested. "It's been a while since we've all been here, right? Because some of us are too busy with their perfect little lives to remember family exists," Mike shot back. Sarah felt heat rise in her cheeks. "What's that supposed to mean? Come on, Sarah. You with your cute little house, your successful marketing job, your adorable kid. Some of us aren't living the American dream. Mike, I've been divorced for 3 years. I'm hardly living a perfect life. But you got to keep everything, didn't you? Because poor little Sarah, she's got a kid to think about." His voice dripped with sarcasm. "Must be nice to have that sympathy card." "That's enough," Robert said firmly, returning from the dining room. "We're family. We support each other through tough times. We don't tear each other down." Mike's laugh was harsh. "Support? Where was the support when Jennifer took half my stuff? Where was the support when I needed a place to stay?" "You know you're always welcome here," Helen said, her voice strained. "We've offered multiple times." "Right, so I can listen to lectures about getting my life together and maybe finding a nice therapist." Mike's voice mocked their mother's gentle tone. Sarah watched her parents' faces, seeing the pain there. They'd been dealing with Mike's anger for months, walking on eggshells around their own son. It wasn't fair to them, and it certainly wasn't fair to Emma. "Uncle Mike, I set your place next to mine." Emma's voice carried from the dining room, innocent and hopeful. Something shifted in Mike's expression. A flicker of the brother Sarah remembered from childhood, the one who taught Emma to ride a bike and spent hours playing elaborate games with her. But it was gone so quickly, she might have imagined it. "Great, kid," he called back, his voice flat. They moved to the dining room, where Helen's beautiful oak table was set with her good china and the centerpiece of autumn leaves Emma had helped arrange on previous visits. The room felt smaller with Mike's negative energy filling it, but Emma seemed determined to maintain her cheerful demeanor. "Mommy, can I tell everyone about my school project?" "Of course, sweetheart." As they settled around the table, Emma launched into an animated description of her class's study of local history. She'd been assigned to research the immigration patterns in Cleveland, and her enthusiasm was infectious as she described interviewing neighbors about their families' journeys to America. And Mrs. Patterson from down the street, her grandparents came from Italy in 1923, and Mr. Rodriguez's family came from Mexico in the 1960s. Everyone has such interesting stories. Robert's eyes lit up. "Did you include our story, Emma?" "Yes. I wrote about how you and Grandma came from Taiwan when Mommy was little, and how you started your business, and how you always say America gave you opportunities you never could have had." Helen reached over to squeeze Emma's hand. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. Education is so important. It's how we build better lives for our families, unlike some people who throw their opportunities away." Mike muttered into his wine glass. Sarah shot him a warning look, but he was already pouring himself another glass. The dinner conversation continued, but the undercurrent of tension was palpable. Emma, with the resilience of childhood, continued chattering about school, her friends, and her upcoming piano recital. "I've been practicing for Elise for weeks now. Want to hear it after dinner, Uncle Mike?" Mike looked at his niece, and for a moment, Sarah saw a glimpse of genuine affection. "Sure, kid. Maybe later." But as the evening progressed, Mike's drinking increased and his comments became more pointed. He criticized Sarah's parenting style, questioned her job choices, and made passive-aggressive remarks about her easy life as a single mother. "You know what your problem is, Sarah?" Mike said as Helen served dessert. "You've always been the golden child. Everything just falls into place for you." "Mike, that's not fair," Sarah replied, trying to keep her voice level for Emma's sake. "Isn't it? You got the scholarship to Ohio State. You got the good job right out of college. You got the nice husband, even if you couldn't keep him." "Mike!" Helen's voice was sharp with reproach. "What? I'm just saying what everyone's thinking." Sarah gets everything handed to her, and when life gets a little tough, she just walks away. From her marriage, from family obligations. I didn't walk away from anything, Sarah said, her voice rising despite her efforts to stay calm. I work 60-hour weeks to support my daughter. I've been there for this family through everything. Dad's heart attack, Mom's surgery, your wedding, your divorce proceedings. I've never walked away from anything. Right, because you're perfect, Mike sneered. Saint Sarah, always doing the right thing. Emma had gone quiet, her small hands folded in her lap. Sarah noticed her daughter's distress and made a decision. Emma, why don't you go practice piano? We can listen to your recital piece now. Emma nodded eagerly, sliding off her chair. As she left the room, Sarah turned back to Mike. This has to stop. I don't care what you're going through, but you don't get to take it out on me or my daughter. Your daughter? Mike's voice was dangerous now. She's our niece, Sarah. She's part of this family, not just your little princess. She's my daughter first, and I won't have her listening to this kind of hostility. Hostility? I'm just being honest. Maybe if someone had been honest with you before, you wouldn't have made such a mess of your marriage. The sound of Emma's tentative piano playing drifted from the living room, the gentle melody of Für Elise providing a stark contrast to the tension at the dinner table. That's enough, Robert said firmly. Mike, you need to stop this. Stop what? Telling the truth. Sarah's always been the favorite, and now she's raising her kid to be the same way. Little Emma can do no wrong, just like her mother. There's nothing wrong with encouraging a child, Helen said, her voice strained. Emma is a sweet, well-behaved little girl. She's spoiled, Mike shot back. She gets everything she wants, never learns to deal with disappointment, just like her mother. Sarah felt her control slipping. You don't know what you're talking about. Emma has been through a divorce, adjusting to a new life, dealing with changes. Oh, boo-hoo. Life is hard, Sarah. Some of us don't get to shield our kids from reality. Some of us don't have kids to shield from anything, Sarah snapped, immediately regretting the words. Mike's face went white, then red. That's rich, coming from someone who couldn't even keep her own marriage together. Mike, please, Helen pleaded. This isn't helping anyone. But Mike was beyond reasoning now. You know what? I'm tired of pretending everything is fine. I'm tired of watching everyone coddle Sarah and her perfect little daughter while my life falls apart. Maybe it's time someone told the truth around here. The piano music stopped abruptly, and they could hear Emma's footsteps returning to the dining room. Sarah felt a chill of premonition, but before she could react, Emma appeared in the doorway. I messed up the ending, Emma said softly, her eyes darting between the adults' tense faces. But I think I can play it better if I practice more. That's okay, sweetheart, Sarah said, forcing a smile. It sounded beautiful. No, it didn't, Mike said bluntly. It sounded sloppy. If you're going to play something, Emma, you should play it right. Emma's face fell, and Sarah felt a surge of protective anger. Mike, she's 7 years old, she's learning. And she'll never learn if everyone keeps telling her she's perfect when she's not. Mike, that's enough, Robert said, his voice carrying a warning. But Mike wasn't finished. She needs to learn that the world isn't going to coddle her like her mother does. Life is hard, and the sooner she learns that, the better. Emma's eyes filled with tears, and Sarah stood up abruptly. We're leaving. Sarah, please, Helen started. But Sarah was already moving toward Emma. No, Mum. This is toxic, and I won't subject Emma to it. Toxic? Mike stood up too, his chair scraping against the floor. I'm toxic for trying to teach my niece about reality. You're toxic for taking your anger out on a child, Sarah shot back, putting her arm around Emma's shoulders. She's not your private property, Sarah. She's part of this family, and families tell each other the truth. The truth? What truth? That you're bitter and angry and taking it out on everyone around you. Mike's face contorted with rage. Don't you dare... Don't I dare what? Point out that you're behaving like a child, that you're drunk and nasty and making everyone miserable? At least I'm honest about my problems, instead of pretending everything is perfect. I never pretended anything was perfect. I just try to handle my problems like an adult, instead of lashing out at everyone around me. Like an adult. You mean like running away when things get tough? I'm not running away. I'm protecting my daughter from your toxic behavior. My toxic behavior? I'm the only one in this family who's honest about anything. Emma began to cry, quiet tears streaming down her face. Sarah knelt down to comfort her, but Mike wasn't finished. Stop coddling her, Sarah. She needs to learn that crying doesn't solve anything. She's 7 years old, Mike. She's allowed to cry. She's allowed to be weak, you mean, just like her mother. That was the breaking point. Sarah stood up, her face flushed with anger. We're leaving now. Run away, Sarah. It's what you do best. As Sarah gathered their coats, Mike's voice followed them. You can't protect her from everything, Sarah. Life is going to teach her things you can't control. Maybe, Sarah said, turning back to face him, but I can control whether she learns them from someone who loves her or someone who wants to tear her down. She picked up Emma, who was still crying softly, and headed for the door. Behind her, she could hear her parents' voices, pleading with Mike to stop, apologizing to her, trying to mediate a situation that had spiraled beyond repair. But Sarah didn't look back. She carried Emma to the car, buckled her in, and drove away from the house that had once felt like a sanctuary, but now felt like a battlefield. As they drove through the familiar streets, Emma's crying subsided into sniffles. Mommy, why was Uncle Mike so mean? Sarah's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Sometimes when people are hurting, they hurt other people. It's not okay, but it's what happens sometimes. Did I really play the piano badly? Sarah's heart broke a little more. No, sweetheart, you played beautifully. Uncle Mike was upset about other things, and he said things he shouldn't have said. Are we going to go back to Grandma and Grandpa's? Sarah stared at the road ahead, watching the familiar landmarks of her childhood pass by. I don't know, Emma. We'll see. But even as she said it, she knew something fundamental had shifted. The family dynamic she'd been trying to preserve, the relationships she'd been trying to maintain despite Mike's increasingly toxic behavior, had reached a breaking point. She thought about Emma's tears, about the confusion and hurt in her daughter's voice, about the way Mike's words had cut through her little girl's confidence like a knife. She thought about her parents' helpless expressions, their inability to control their son's behavior, their tacit acceptance of his cruelty. As they turned onto their own street, Sarah made a decision. She would not put Emma through that again. She would not sacrifice her daughter's emotional well-being for the sake of family harmony. Some lines, once crossed, changed everything, and tonight, Mike had crossed one that couldn't be uncrossed. The warm glow of their own porch light welcomed them home, and Sarah felt a sense of relief she hadn't expected. This was their sanctuary now, their place of peace, and she would protect it, and Emma, from anyone who threatened that peace, even if it meant protecting them from family. The next morning arrived grey and drizzly, matching Sarah's mood as she sat at her kitchen table with her laptop, trying to focus on work while Emma played quietly in the living room. The events of the previous evening replayed in her mind like a broken record, each memory stoking the fire of her anger. Her phone had been buzzing since 8 a.m., missed calls from her mother, text messages from her father, and one voicemail from Mike that she'd deleted without listening to. She wasn't ready to hear his voice, wasn't ready to deal with the inevitable cycle of explanation, justification, and minimal apology that would follow. Emma padded into the kitchen in her fuzzy slippers, her hair tousled from sleep. "Mommy, can I have pancakes?" "Of course, sweetheart." Sarah closed her laptop and pulled her daughter onto her lap. "How are you feeling this morning?" Emma shrugged, a gesture that seemed too mature for her 7 years. "Okay, I guess. I had a bad dream about Uncle Mike yelling." Sarah's heart clenched. "I'm sorry, baby. Bad dreams are scary. In the dream, he was yelling at my piano teacher too, and she started crying." Emma's voice was matter-of-fact, but Sarah could hear the underlying anxiety. "Do you think Uncle Mike hates me?" "Oh, Emma." Sarah held her daughter tighter. "Uncle Mike doesn't hate you. He's going through a very difficult time, and sometimes when adults are sad and angry, they say things they don't mean. But he said I played badly. He was wrong. You played beautifully, and you know what? Even if you had made mistakes, it wouldn't matter. You're learning, and learning means making mistakes sometimes. Emma seemed to consider this. Mrs. Chen next door makes mistakes in her garden, but her flowers still grow pretty. Sarah smiled despite her heavy heart. That's exactly right. Mistakes help us learn and grow. As she made pancakes, Sarah's phone rang again. This time it was her boss, Jennifer Walsh, calling about a client presentation scheduled for Monday. Sarah, I know it's Saturday, but Hartwell Industries moved their meeting up to Monday morning. Can you have the Morrison account materials ready by then? Of course, Sarah said, though her mind was elsewhere. I'll have everything prepared. You sound tired. Everything okay? Sarah paused, considering how much to share. Jennifer had been understanding about the challenges of single parenthood, but Sarah preferred to keep personal issues separate from work. Just family stuff, she said finally. Nothing that will affect the presentation. Okay, but remember, we have good employee assistance programs if you need support. Sometimes talking to someone helps. After they hung up, Sarah realized she was facing a practical problem. She needed to work on the presentation, but Emma had been looking forward to their Saturday plans, a trip to the Children's Museum followed by lunch. At their favorite diner, cancelling would add disappointment to an already difficult weekend. Usually, her parents would have been the obvious choice for babysitting. Helen and Robert adored spending time with Emma, and their house had always been a safe, loving environment. But now, with Mike's presence there and his unpredictable behavior, Sarah couldn't risk it. She called her friend Lisa, a fellow single mother from Emma's school whose son Tyler was Emma's age. "Hey, stranger," Lisa answered. "What's up? I hate to ask last minute, but I have a work emergency. Any chance Emma could hang out with you guys today? I know Tyler had that birthday party and I thought maybe—" "Of course. Tyler would love to have Emma come to the party. What's going on? You sound stressed." Sarah hesitated. Lisa was a good friend, but explaining the family situation felt overwhelming. "Just work stuff. I really appreciate this." "No problem. But Sarah, we should talk soon. You've seemed off lately." "Coffee next week?" "Definitely. I'll drop Emma off in an hour." As Sarah helped Emma get ready for the party, her daughter's excitement was infectious. Tyler's friend Michael has a new trampoline, and Lisa said there's going to be a magician. "That sounds amazing, sweetheart. You're going to have so much fun." But as they drove to Lisa's house, Emma's chatter died down. "Mommy, are you mad at Grandma and Grandpa too?" The question caught Sarah off guard. "No, baby, I'm not mad at them. I'm just disappointed because they didn't make Uncle Mike stop being mean." The perceptiveness of children never ceased to amaze Sarah. "It's complicated, Emma. Sometimes adults have trouble knowing how to handle difficult situations, but they're the grown-ups. They should know how to fix things." "You're right. They should." After dropping Emma at the party, Sarah returned home to an empty house that felt too quiet. She tried to focus on work, but her concentration kept breaking. Finally, she decided to call her sister-in-law Jennifer, Mike's ex-wife. They'd maintained a cordial relationship throughout the divorce, partly because Jennifer had always been kind to Emma, and partly because Sarah had witnessed firsthand how Mike's behavior had deteriorated. "Sarah, hi," Jennifer answered, surprise evident in her voice. "How are you?" "I've been better. I wanted to ask you something, and I hope you'll be honest with me." "Of course. Was Mike ever aggressive with you?" "I don't mean physically, but verbally, emotionally." There was a long pause. "Sarah, what happened?" Sarah described the previous evening, watching as Jennifer's silence grew heavier. "I'm so sorry," Jennifer finally said. "I should have warned you. The drinking has gotten worse since the divorce papers were filed. And yes, to answer your question, the verbal aggression, the emotional manipulation, the way he tears people down when he's angry, it's been escalating for months. Why didn't you tell me? Because he's your brother, and I didn't want to put you in an impossible position. But Sarah, I'm worried about him, and I'm worried about anyone who's around him when he's like this. He said horrible things to Emma, made her cry, and my parents they didn't stop him. That's not okay. Emma doesn't deserve that, and neither do you." Jennifer, can I ask why you really left? The real reason. Another pause. Because I realized I was walking on eggshells in my own home. Because I was making excuses for his behavior to our friends, to my family, to myself. Because I was afraid of who I was becoming in that relationship. Sarah felt a chill of recognition. And now he's doing the same thing to our family. Sarah, I care about you and Emma. If Mike is creating a toxic environment, you have every right to protect your daughter from it. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. After they hung up, Sarah sat in her quiet living room, processing the conversation. She'd been making excuses for Mike's behavior for months, just as Jennifer had. She'd been walking on eggshells, just as Jennifer had. She'd been prioritizing family harmony over her daughter's emotional well-being, just as Jennifer had prioritized her marriage over her own mental health. The realization was both clarifying and painful. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Sarah, please call me. We need to talk about last night." Sarah stared at the message for a long moment before typing back, "I'm not ready to talk yet. I need some time to think." The response came quickly. "I understand you're upset, but Mike feels terrible about what happened. He wants to apologize." Sarah's anger flared again. "He made Emma cry, Mum. He was cruel to a 7-year-old child. He was drunk and upset. You know that's not who he really is. But it's who he's choosing to be right now, and I won't expose Emma to that. Sarah, please. We're a family. We work through difficult times together. A family protects its most vulnerable members. Emma is 7 years old. She should be the priority here." The typing indicator showed her mother composing a response, then disappearing, then starting again. Finally, "Can we at least talk? Just you and me?" Sarah considered the request. Part of her wanted to maintain the boundaries she'd established to protect both herself and Emma from further hurt. But another part of her, the part that had been conditioned by years of family loyalty, felt guilty for cutting off communication entirely. "Not yet," she finally typed. "I need more time." The afternoon passed slowly. Sarah worked on her presentation, but her mind kept drifting to family memories, holidays at her parents' house, Mike teaching Emma to ride a bike, the way her parents had rallied around her during her own divorce. The good times made the current situation even more painful. When she picked up Emma from the party, her daughter was buzzing with excitement about the magician, the trampoline, and the elaborate superhero cake. "Tyler's mum said I could sleep over next Friday if you say yes," Emma said as they drove home. "Can I? Please? We'll see, sweetheart. That sounds like fun. She's really nice. She helped me when I fell off the trampoline, and she didn't get mad when I accidentally spilled juice on her shirt." Sarah smiled. "Lisa is a good friend." "Dinner. She asked if we were going to Grandma and Grandpa's tomorrow for lunch like we usually do. I told her I didn't know." The Sunday lunch tradition had been another cornerstone of their family routine. Helen would make her famous dim sum. Robert would help Emma with her homework, and they'd spend the afternoon playing board games or working in the garden. "What did you tell her? That maybe we're taking a break from Sunday lunch?" Emma's voice was carefully neutral. "Are we?" Sarah pulled into their driveway and turned to face her daughter. "Emma, how would you feel if we didn't go to Grandma and Grandpa's for a while?" Emma was quiet for a long moment. "I would miss them," she said finally. "But I don't want Uncle Mike to be mean to me again. He won't be mean to you again, I promise." "How do you know?" It was a fair question, and Sarah realized she couldn't answer it with certainty. She couldn't promise that Mike would change, couldn't guarantee that her parents would handle future situations differently. "Because I won't let him," she said finally. "I will always protect you." That evening, as Emma played with her dolls, Sarah's phone rang. It was her father. "Sarah, I know you don't want to talk to your mother right now, but I need to say something." Robert's voice was tired, older than she'd ever heard it. "You were right to leave last night. Mike's behavior was unacceptable, and I should have stopped it sooner." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. "Dad, let me finish. Your mother and I have been so worried about Mike that we've been enabling his behavior. We've been making excuses, walking on eggshells, trying to keep peace instead of addressing the real problem." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that we failed Emma last night. We failed you, and I'm ashamed of that." Sarah sat down heavily on her couch. "I don't understand why you didn't stop him. Because we've been treating him like a victim instead of holding him accountable for his actions. Because we've been so afraid of losing him that we've been willing to sacrifice everyone else's comfort. And now we realize that we might lose you and Emma instead, and that's not acceptable." Sarah wiped away tears she hadn't realized were falling. "Dad, I love you and Mom so much, but I can't put Emma in that situation again." "I know. And I don't expect you to. We're going to have a serious conversation with Mike about his behavior and our expectations. We're going to insist he get professional help. And if he refuses, then he won't be welcome in our home when Emma is there. Your daughter's safety and emotional well-being come first." It was what Sarah had needed to hear, but it came with its own weight of sadness. The family she'd known was changing, fracturing along lines that might never fully heal. "I appreciate that, Dad. I really do, but I still need some time." "I understand. Take all the time you need. But Sarah, please know that your mother and I love you and Emma more than anything. We're going to do better." After they hung up, Sarah sat in the quiet of her living room, watching Emma play with her dolls. Her daughter had created an elaborate scenario involving a princess, a dragon, and a brave knight. But Sarah noticed that in Emma's version, the princess saved herself. Maybe that was the lesson they both needed to learn. Sometimes you had to save yourself, even if it meant disappointing people you loved. Sometimes protection meant creating distance, even from family. As she tucked Emma into bed that night, her daughter asked, "Mommy, are you sad?" "A little bit, sweetheart, but I'm also proud of us." "Why?" "Because we're taking care of each other. Because we're brave enough to make difficult decisions when we need to." Emma seemed to consider this. "Like the princess in my story?" "Exactly like the princess in your story." As Sarah turned off the lights and closed Emma's door, she felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. The family structure she'd known was breaking apart, but maybe something healthier could emerge from the pieces. She thought about Jennifer's words, about the eggshells and the excuses, and the gradual erosion of boundaries. She thought about her parents' promise to do better, and wondered if it was possible to rebuild trust once it had been broken. Most of all, she thought about Emma's question, "Are we going to go back to Grandma and Grandpa's?" The answer, she realized, would depend not on her family's promises, but on their actions. And until those actions proved that Emma would be safe and respected, Sarah would continue to choose her daughter's well-being over family harmony. It was a choice she'd never thought she'd have to make. But as she'd learned from her daughter's princess story, sometimes the most important person to save was yourself. 3 weeks had passed since the disastrous family dinner, and Sarah had settled into a routine that felt both liberating and isolating. Emma seemed to be thriving with the reduced family drama. Her piano playing had improved, her grades were excellent, and she'd made a new friend at school named Sophia, who shared her love of books and science experiments. But the absence of her parents weighed on Sarah more than she'd expected. Sunday afternoons felt empty, without Helen's dim sum and Robert's patient help with Emma's math homework. Emma asked about her grandparents daily, and Sarah found herself deflecting questions about when they'd see them again. The professional front Sarah had maintained was beginning to crack. She'd successfully delivered the Morrison account presentation, but her concentration at work was suffering. Her colleague Marcus had noticed her distraction during meetings, and Jennifer had gently suggested she take advantage of the company's employee assistance program. It was a Tuesday evening when everything came to a head. Sarah was helping Emma with a school project about family trees when her doorbell rang. Through the peephole, she saw her parents standing on her front porch, looking older and more fragile than she remembered. "Mommy, who is it?" Emma called from the dining room. Sarah's heart raced. She wasn't prepared for this conversation, especially not with Emma present. But her parents' expressions were so hopeful, so tired, that she couldn't turn them away. "It's Grandma and Grandpa," she said, opening the door. "Grandma, Grandpa!" Emma's shriek of delight echoed through the house as she ran to the door. The joy on her face was unmistakable, and Sarah felt a pang of guilt for depriving her daughter of this relationship. Helen knelt down to embrace Emma, tears streaming down her face. "Oh, sweetheart, I've missed you so much." "I missed you too. I learned a new song on the piano, and I got an A on my science test, and Sophia and I built a volcano that actually erupted." Robert's eyes crinkled with familiar warmth. "A volcano? That sounds impressive. I'd love to hear all about it." Sarah stepped back to let them in, her emotions warring between relief at seeing her parents and anxiety about what this visit meant. "Mom, Dad, I wasn't expecting you." "We know," Helen said, her voice gentle but determined. "We should have called first, but we needed to see you both, and we were afraid you'd say no." Emma grabbed her grandfather's hand. "Come see my family tree project. I put pictures of everyone, even Uncle Mike, but I made his picture smaller because Mommy said we're taking a break from him." The innocent honesty of childhood struck the room like a physical blow. Sarah saw her parents' faces crumple with understanding of how deeply the situation had affected Emma. "Emma, why don't you show Grandma and Grandpa your project while I make some tea?" Sarah suggested, needing a moment to collect herself. As she moved around the kitchen, Sarah could hear Emma's animated voice explaining her school project, her parents' gentle responses, and the easy rhythm of conversation that had always characterized their relationship. The normalcy of it made her chest tight with longing. When she returned with tea, Emma was showing Robert her latest piano piece. "It's called Moonlight Sonata, but just the easy part," Emma explained. "Mrs. Patterson says I'm ready for harder pieces soon." "That's wonderful, sweetheart," Helen said. "You've always been so talented." "Mommy says talent is just practice in disguise," Emma replied matter-of-factly. "So I practice every day, even when I don't feel like it." Sarah felt her parents' eyes on her, recognizing the lesson she'd been teaching Emma about perseverance and commitment. It was a lesson she'd learned from them in this very house decades ago. "Emma, honey, would you mind practicing in your room for a few minutes? Grandma and Grandpa need to talk to Mommy about grown-up things." Emma's face fell slightly, but she nodded. "Can I play the new song for you before you leave?" "Of course," Helen said, her voice thick with emotion. "We wouldn't miss it." After Emma disappeared upstairs, the three adults sat in Sarah's living room, the weight of unspoken words heavy between them. "She looks good," Robert said finally. "Happy." "She is," Sarah replied. "It's been peaceful here." Helen leaned forward, her hands clasped tightly. "Sarah, we need to tell you what's been happening with Mike." Sarah tensed. "I'm not sure I'm ready to hear excuses." "No excuses," Robert interrupted firmly. "Just facts and consequences." Over the next hour, Sarah's parents painted a picture of the past 3 weeks that was both heartbreaking and hopeful. They'd confronted Mike about his behavior, demanding he seek professional help. When he'd refused and become belligerent, they'd made a decision that had shocked him into silence. "We told him he wasn't welcome in our home until he got treatment," Helen said, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. "We told him that his behavior toward you and Emma was unacceptable and that we wouldn't enable it anymore." "How did he react?" Sarah asked. "Poorly at first," Robert admitted. "He accused us of choosing you over him, said we were abandoning him when he needed us most, but we held firm. And then he left, didn't speak to us for a week. But last Monday, he called. He'd started seeing a therapist, and he wanted to begin making amends." Sarah felt a complex mix of emotions, relief that her parents had taken action, sadness for the family's fracture, and wariness about Mike's sudden change of heart. "Sarah," Helen said, reaching for her daughter's hand, "we realize we failed you and Emma that night. We were so focused on managing Mike's pain that we forgot to protect you from it. We've been thinking about this for years, honestly," Robert added. "Ever since his marriage started falling apart, we've been making excuses for behavior we never would have tolerated from you or your cousins." "Why?" Sarah asked. "Why was he different?" Helen and Robert exchanged a look that spoke of long conversations and difficult realizations. "Because he's always been our baby," Helen said softly. "Because he struggled more than you did. In school, in relationships, in finding his place in the world. We thought we were helping him by being understanding, by giving him chances. But we were actually hurting him, Robert continued, and hurting everyone else in the process. Sarah absorbed this, thinking about the patterns they'd all fallen into over the years. What's different now? We've been seeing a family therapist, Helen said. Dr. Martinez. She's been helping us understand how our responses to Mike's behavior have affected the whole family dynamic. She wants to meet with all of us, Robert added. Separately at first, then together if everyone's comfortable. Including Mike? Eventually. But not until he's done significant work on himself, and not until you feel safe and ready. Sarah stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the quiet street where Emma rode her bike, where neighbors waved hello, where life felt manageable and peaceful. I need to ask you something, she said without turning around. That night, when Mike was being cruel to Emma, why didn't you stop him immediately? The silence stretched so long that Sarah finally turned back to face her parents. Helen was crying openly now, and Robert's face was etched with pain. Because we were afraid, Helen whispered. We were afraid that if we confronted him, he'd leave and never come back. We were afraid of losing our son. But you were willing to risk losing me and Emma? We weren't thinking clearly, Robert said. We were operating from fear instead of love, and we're deeply ashamed of that. Sarah felt the truth of their words, the genuine remorse, but also the weight of the damage that had been done. Emma asked me if you hated her, Sarah said quietly. She asked if she really played the piano badly. A 7-year-old child spent weeks wondering if her own grandparents thought she was disappointing. Helen's sob was audible. Oh, Sarah, we never ever thought that. We love Emma more than life itself. But you let Mike make her feel otherwise. You let him hurt her, and then you let me walk out without trying to fix it. You're right, Robert said. We were wrong. Completely, inexcusably wrong. And now you want me to trust that things will be different. We want to earn that trust, Helen said. We know it will take time. We know we have to prove ourselves through actions, not just words. Sarah returned to her seat, studying her parents' faces. She saw the genuine remorse there, the commitment to change, but also the fear of losing their family entirely. What does Dr. Martinez say about boundaries? Sarah asked. That they're essential for healthy relationships, Robert replied. That we should have been setting them with Mike years ago. And what boundaries are you setting now? Helen pulled out a piece of paper from her purse. We wrote them down, so there's no confusion. Sarah read the list, surprised by its thoroughness. No alcohol during family gatherings, no verbal aggression or personal attacks directed at any family member, no discussion of divorce proceedings or legal issues during family time, mandatory therapy attendance with proof of participation, immediate departure from family events if boundaries are violated, no contact with Emma until Sarah approves and Emma consents. Sincere apologies to both Sarah and Emma, with specific acknowledgement of harm caused. This is detailed, Sarah said. Dr. Martinez helped us understand that vague promises don't create change, Helen explained. We need specific, measurable boundaries. And Mike agreed to these. He's working on it. Some of them, yes. Others he's still struggling with. Sarah looked at the list again, then at her parents' hopeful faces. What about my boundaries? What do you mean? Robert asked. I mean, what if I'm not ready to have Mike around Emma at all? What if I need more time? What if I decide the damage is too significant to repair? She saw the pain in their eyes, but also something else. Acceptance. Then we respect that, Helen said firmly. Emma's safety and emotional well-being come first, always, even if it means Mike isn't included in family events. Even then, the sound of Emma's piano playing drifted down from upstairs, the gentle melody providing a soundtrack to this difficult conversation. Sarah realized her daughter had been practicing the entire time, giving the adults space to talk while also providing herself comfort through music. There's something else, Robert said. We want to establish regular time with you and Emma, separate from any interaction with Mike. We want to rebuild our relationship with both of you, independent of whatever happens with your brother. What would that look like? Sunday dinners at our house, just the four of us, or here, if you prefer. Emma's piano recitals, school events, birthdays, all the things we used to do together. Sarah felt a flutter of hope mixed with caution. And if Mike shows up uninvited? He won't, Helen said with quiet certainty. We've changed the locks and made it clear that he needs to call before coming over. You changed the locks? Dr. Martinez suggested it. She said physical boundaries sometimes need to accompany emotional ones. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, processing everything she'd heard. Her parents had taken concrete steps to address the situation, but the hurt was still fresh, the trust still fragile. I need to think about this, she said finally, and I need to talk to Emma about what she wants. Of course, and I want to talk to Dr. Martinez myself before I make any decisions about family gatherings. She said you might want to do that. She has time this Friday afternoon if you're interested. Sarah nodded, then called upstairs. Emma, can you come down and play your new song for Grandma and Grandpa? Emma's footsteps thundered down the stairs, and she launched into an enthusiastic performance of her simplified version of Moonlight Sonata. Her technique was imperfect, her timing occasionally off, but her joy in playing was evident. When she finished, Helen and Robert applauded enthusiastically. That was beautiful, sweetheart, Helen said. You've improved so much. I have been practicing every day, Emma said proudly, even the hard parts. That's what makes you such a good musician, Robert added, not giving up when things are difficult. Sarah watched this interaction carefully, noting how her parents' praise was specific and encouraging, how they focused on Emma's effort rather than just her talent. It was exactly the kind of support Emma needed, the kind Sarah remembered receiving as a child. As her parents prepared to leave, Emma hugged them tightly. Will I see you again soon? I hope so, sweetheart, Helen said. But that's up to your mommy. Emma looked at Sarah with questioning eyes. Mommy, we'll see, baby. Grandma and Grandpa and I need to have some more grown-up conversations first. About Uncle Mike? The directness of the question surprised the adults. Sarah had forgotten how much children observed and understood, even when they seemed to be playing or distracted. Among other things, yes, Emma nodded solemnly. I hope he gets better, but I don't want him to be mean to me anymore. He won't be, Helen said firmly. We promise. You can't promise that, Emma replied with startling wisdom. You can only promise that you won't let him. The adults exchanged glances, struck by the child's insight. You're absolutely right, Robert said. And we promise we won't let him be mean to you anymore. After her parents left, Sarah sat on the couch with Emma, both of them processing the visit. How do you feel about seeing Grandma and Grandpa? Sarah asked. Happy, Emma said immediately, but also confused. Confused about what? About why grown-ups make things so complicated. If Uncle Mike is being mean, why can't everyone just tell him to stop? Sarah marveled at her daughter's ability to cut through adult complexity to the heart of the matter. That's a really good question, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups don't handle things the right way the first time, but they can learn to do better. I think so. I hope so. Do you think Uncle Mike will learn to do better? Sarah considered how to answer honestly without burdening Emma with adult concerns. I think he's trying to learn, but even if he does, we'll be very careful about spending time with him, because trust is earned, not given. Where did you learn that? From you. You said it about my friend Jessica when she kept breaking promises. Sarah smiled, realizing that her parenting lessons were being absorbed and applied in ways she hadn't expected. That night, after Emma was asleep, Sarah sat at her kitchen table with a legal pad, writing down her own thoughts and questions. She listed her concerns about Mike's behavior, her hopes for repairing the relationship with her parents, and her non-negotiable requirements for Emma's safety and well-being. At the top of the page, she wrote, "What does Emma need from this family?" The answer came easily. Love, respect, safety, and the security of knowing the adults in her life would protect her from harm. Everything else was negotiable. Friday afternoon found Sarah sitting in Dr. Martinez's office, a comfortable space decorated with warm colors and soft lighting that seemed designed to encourage difficult conversations. The family therapist was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a direct manner that Sarah immediately appreciated. "Your parents have told me a lot about the situation," Dr. Martinez began, "but I'd like to hear your perspective." Sarah found herself telling the story again. The dinner, Mike's cruelty, her parents' inaction, Emma's tears, but this, time. She also talked about the weeks that followed, the guilt and relief of setting boundaries, the way Emma had flourished without the family drama. "You've been protecting your daughter," Dr. Martinez observed. "That's not something to feel guilty about. But I feel like I'm breaking up the family." "Sarah, families break when they become unsafe, not when members establish boundaries. What you did was create safety for Emma when the family system failed to do so." They talked for an hour about family dynamics, about the difference between forgiveness and reconciliation, about the importance of actions over words. Dr. Martinez helped Sarah understand that her parents' enabling behavior had been a form of emotional neglect, even if it wasn't intentional. "What would need to happen for you to feel safe bringing Emma back into family gatherings?" Dr. Martinez asked. Sarah had been thinking about this question all week. "I need to see consistent change over time, not just promises, but actual behavior. I need to know that Emma's emotional safety is the priority, not family harmony." That's a reasonable expectation. "What timeline feels right to you?" "I don't know. Months, maybe? I need to see how Mike handles his therapy, how my parents maintain their boundaries, how everyone responds when tested. And in the meantime, I'd like to rebuild my relationship with my parents, separate from Mike. Emma needs her grandparents, and honestly, so do I." Dr. Martinez nodded approvingly. "That sounds like a healthy approach. Compartmentalizing relationships can be an effective way to preserve what's valuable while protecting against what's harmful." When Sarah left the appointment, she felt clearer about her path forward. She called her parents that evening and proposed a plan. Sunday dinners would resume, but only with Helen, Robert, Sarah, and Emma. No Mike, no discussion of Mike, no pressure to reconcile faster than felt comfortable. "Just us four," she said, "like it used to be when I was little and Mike was at friends' houses." "That sounds perfect," Helen said, her voice bright with relief. The first Sunday dinner in almost a month felt like stepping back in time. Helen had prepared all of Emma's favorites, Robert had brought a new jigsaw puzzle, and the conversation flowed easily around school, work, and Emma's upcoming piano recital. "I wrote a story about our family," Emma announced over dessert. "Want to hear it?" "Of course," Sarah said, though she felt a flutter of anxiety about what her daughter might have written. Emma pulled out a carefully folded piece of paper. "It's called The Princess and the Talking Dragon." Once upon a time, there was a princess who lived in a beautiful castle with her mommy the queen and her grandparents the king and queen. They were very happy together. But then a dragon came to live in the castle, and the dragon was sad and angry all the time because he had lost his treasure. Sarah's heart clenched, recognizing the metaphor. The dragon's sadness made him breathe fire at everyone, especially the little princess. The fire didn't burn her body, but it made her heart hurt. The queen tried to protect the princess, but the king and queen were afraid that if they made the dragon leave, he would never come back. Helen reached for Robert's hand, both of them listening intently. So the queen took the princess to a new castle where they could be safe. The princess missed the king and queen very much, but she liked not having fire breathed at her. After a while, the king and queen realized that the princess's safety was more important than keeping the dragon happy. "What happened to the dragon?" Robert asked gently. "He went to see a wise owl who taught him how to be sad without breathing fire at other people. The princess doesn't know if he learned how to do it yet, but she hopes he did." Emma looked up at the adults' faces. "The end. Did you like it?" "It's a wonderful story," Helen said, her voice thick with emotion. "Very wise. The princess sounds very brave," Robert added. "She is," Emma said, matter-of-factly. "She had a good mommy who taught her how to be brave." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. Her daughter had processed their family crisis with remarkable insight, creating a narrative that acknowledged everyone's pain while centering her own need for safety. "What do you think will happen next in the story?" Sarah asked. Emma considered this seriously. "I think the princess will keep living safely in her new castle, and the king and queen will visit her there. And maybe someday, if the dragon really learns not to breathe fire, he can visit too. But only if the princess wants him to." The adults exchanged glances, recognizing the wisdom in Emma's fictional solution. Over the following weeks, Sunday dinners became a cherished routine again. Helen and Robert were careful to respect the boundaries Sarah had established, never pushing for updates about Mike or pressuring her to speed up the reconciliation process. Instead, they focused on rebuilding trust through consistent, loving behavior. Emma flourished under her grandparents' renewed attention. Her piano playing improved. Dramatically, her confidence grew, and she began talking about her future with the kind of optimism that had been missing during the family conflict. Meanwhile, Sarah received periodic updates about Mike's progress. He was attending therapy regularly, had stopped drinking, and was working on what his therapist called emotional regulation skills. He'd written letters of apology to both Sarah and Emma, though Sarah wasn't ready to read them yet. "He seems to be taking it seriously," Helen reported during one of their Sunday dinners. "Dr. Martinez says he's beginning to understand how his behavior affected everyone." "That's good," Sarah said carefully. "But understanding and changing are different things. We know. We're not rushing anything." It was mid-December, nearly 2 months after the original incident, when Mike made his first real gesture toward making amends. He'd asked his parents to give Emma a Christmas gift, not from him, but from someone who cares about her. It was a beautiful music box with a ballerina that danced to Für Elise. "There's a note," Helen said, handing Sarah a sealed envelope. Sarah opened it to find a card with a simple message. "For Emma, who plays beautifully and deserves only kindness. I'm sorry for making you sad. Someone who is learning to be better." "He wanted you to know it was from him," Robert explained, "but he didn't want to put you in the position of having to respond." Sarah studied the card, noting the careful handwriting, the simplicity of the message, the lack of excuses or self-justification. It was different from the Mike she'd known, the one who'd always had elaborate explanations for his behavior. "What does Emma think?" Sarah asked. "She doesn't know it's from him," Helen said. "We just said it was from someone who wanted her to know she was special." Emma had been delighted with the music box, playing Für Elise repeatedly so she could watch the ballerina dance. The gift had brought her joy without the complications of knowing its source. "I think that was the right approach," Sarah said. "She doesn't need to know right now." Christmas came and went peacefully. Sarah, Emma, and her parents established new traditions, decorating cookies at Sarah's house, attending Emma's school Christmas concert together, having quiet Christmas morning at Helen and Robert's house. The absence of Mike's volatile energy made everything feel lighter, more joyful. Emma's piano recital in January was a triumph. She played Für Elise flawlessly, her confidence evident in every note. As she took her bow, Sarah saw her parents' faces glowing with pride and love. "She's remarkable," Helen whispered. "She is," Sarah agreed, "and she's safe." After the recital, as they were gathering their things, Emma asked a question that caught Sarah off guard. "Mommy, do you think Uncle Mike knows I played the song today?" Sarah exchanged glances with her parents. "Why do you ask, sweetheart?" "Because the music box plays the same song, and I wondered if that person who gave it to me knows I've been practicing." The perceptiveness of children never ceased to amaze Sarah. "What made you think of that?" "I just did. Sometimes I think about him when I play, and I wonder if he's learning to be less sad." Sarah knelt down to Emma's level. "Would you like to know who gave you the music box?" Emma nodded solemnly. "It was Uncle Mike. He wanted you to know that he thinks you're special, but he didn't want to make you uncomfortable." Emma processed this information with the seriousness of a child who'd learned to navigate complex emotional territory. Is he still learning to be better? I think so. But even if he is, we're going to be very careful about spending time with him. Because trust is earned, not given. Sarah smiled at her daughter's recall of their earlier conversation. Exactly. If he keeps learning, maybe someday he can hear me play in person again. Maybe, but only if you want him to, and only if we're sure he's safe to be around. Emma nodded, then surprised Sarah with her next question. Do you think he's proud of how I played tonight? The question pierced Sarah's heart. Despite everything, Emma still craved approval from her uncle, still wanted to believe in the loving relationship they'd once shared. I think anyone who heard you play tonight would be proud, Sarah said carefully. You were amazing. I hope he knows. That night, after Emma was asleep, Sarah made a decision that surprised even her. She sat down at her computer and wrote a brief email to Mike. Mike, Emma played Für Elise at her recital tonight. She was flawless. She asked if you knew she'd been practicing the song from the music box. I told her you'd be proud. She's an amazing kid who deserves only kindness. I hope your therapy is helping you become the person she remembers you being. Sarah. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. The response came the next morning. Sarah, thank you for telling me about the recital. I would have loved to hear her play. She's lucky to have you protecting her. I'm working hard to become someone worthy of being in her life again. I know I have a lot to prove, and I'm not rushing anything. I just want you to know that I understand now how much I hurt both of you, and I'm truly sorry. Mike. Sarah read the message several times, looking for signs of manipulation or self-pity. Instead, she found accountability and genuine remorse. It was a start. Over the following months, the family's new normal solidified. Sarah and Emma continued their Sunday dinners with Helen and Robert, their relationship growing stronger without the undercurrent of drama that had characterized previous gatherings. Emma thrived academically and socially, her confidence blooming in the safe environment they'd created. Mike continued his therapy and maintained minimal contact through their parents. He'd started attending AA meetings and had found a new job after losing his previous one due to his drinking. The updates were positive but carefully managed. No one was rushing toward reconciliation. In April, nearly 6 months after the original incident, Dr. Martinez suggested a family session including Mike. Sarah's initial reaction was resistance, but the therapist explained that it would be a controlled environment where everyone could address the situation directly. Emma wouldn't be included, Dr. Martinez clarified. This would be about you, your parents, and Mike working through what happened and establishing clear expectations for any future interaction. Sarah agreed, with the understanding that she could leave at any time and that the session didn't commit her to anything beyond conversation. The day of the session, Sarah arrived at Dr. Martinez's office with a mixture of nervousness and curiosity. She hadn't seen Mike in 6 months, and she wasn't sure what to expect. He looked different, thinner, more carefully groomed, with an alertness in his eyes that had been missing during his drinking period. When he saw her, he didn't immediately speak, just nodded respectfully. Sarah, he said simply, thank you for coming. The session was intense but productive. Mike took full responsibility for his behavior, acknowledging the specific ways he'd hurt both Sarah and Emma. He didn't make excuses or blame his divorce or his drinking. He simply owned his actions and their consequences. I was cruel to a child, he said at one point, his voice breaking. I was cruel to Emma, who never did anything but love me. There's no excuse for that. What's different now? Sarah asked. I've learned that my pain doesn't give me the right to hurt other people. I've learned that being a victim of one situation doesn't excuse becoming a perpetrator in another. I've learned that Emma's safety and happiness are more important than my feelings. And how do I know you won't slip back into old patterns? Mike was quiet for a long moment. You don't. I can't promise I'll never make mistakes or never have bad days. But I can promise that I'll never take my problems out on Emma again. I can promise that I'll leave any situation where I feel myself losing control. What does that look like practically? It means I don't attend family gatherings if I'm having a bad day. It means I don't drink around Emma, ever. It means I apologize immediately if I say something hurtful, and I don't make excuses for my behavior. Sarah looked at her parents, who had been quietly listening. Are you prepared to enforce these boundaries? Yes, Helen said firmly. We've learned that protecting Emma means being willing to exclude Mike if necessary, even if it hurts him. Even then, Robert confirmed, Emma's well-being comes first. The session ended with an agreement to continue meeting monthly, with the possibility of eventually including Emma if everyone felt comfortable. Sarah left feeling cautiously optimistic, but still committed to protecting her daughter above all else. That evening, she talked to Emma about the session. I saw Uncle Mike today, she said. He's been working very hard to learn how to manage his sadness without being mean to other people. Is he better now? He's getting better, but it's going to take time, and we're going to be very careful. Will I see him again? Maybe, but only if you want to, and only if we're sure he's safe to be around. Emma nodded thoughtfully. I hope he learns. I miss the nice Uncle Mike. I miss him too, sweetheart. But the most important thing is keeping you safe and happy. I know. You're a good mommy. As Sarah tucked Emma into bed that night, she reflected on the journey they'd taken over the past 6 months. It had been painful and difficult, but it had also been clarifying. She'd learned that love sometimes meant creating distance, that protecting meant disappointing, that family loyalty had limits. Most importantly, she'd learned that Emma's well-being was worth any amount of family drama. The little girl, sleeping peacefully in her bed, had become more confident, more secure, more joyful in the months since they'd established boundaries. That was worth more than any family harmony built on eggshells and enabling. The future remained uncertain. Mike might continue to grow and change, or he might slip back into old patterns. Her parents might maintain their newfound commitment to boundaries, or they might gradually return to their enabling behavior. But Sarah had learned that she couldn't control any of that. What she could control was her response to it. She could continue to choose Emma's safety over family peace. She could continue to model healthy boundaries and self-respect. She could continue to be the parent Emma deserved, one who protected her from harm, even when that harm came from family. As she turned off the lights and closed Emma's door, Sarah felt a deep sense of peace. They'd weathered the storm together, and they'd emerged stronger. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she knew they could face them together. In the living room, the music box sat on the mantel, its ballerina frozen in mid-dance. Tomorrow, Emma would wind it up again and watch the tiny figure spin to the melody of Für Elise, a song that had become a symbol of healing and hope rather than hurt and disappointment. It was a small thing, but it represented something larger, the possibility of transformation, the power of boundaries, and the unbreakable bond between a mother and daughter who'd learned to save each other.